We call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled and convened Greer City Council meeting called this evening, July the 27th, 2021. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Council Member Riley Bettis, if he would, please to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance followed by an invocation for council. If you would, please join me in standing.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Came across a short prayer by President Woodrow Wilson. Almighty God, ruler of all the peoples of the earth, forgive our shortcomings as a nation, purify our hearts to see the love and the truth. Give wisdom to our leaders and steadfastness to our people, and bring us at last to that fair city of peace, whose foundations are mercy, justice, and goodwill, of which you are the designer and builder through your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Ms. Duncan, anybody to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
It is my pleasure then, before we move forward with our meeting tonight, to introduce our Greenville County Councilman. Mr. Mike Barnes joins us this evening. And Mike, if you'll raise your hand there so people can see you. And I won't do you like the judge did me one of the first times I went. He thanked me in advance for staying for the whole session of court. So I was stuck there for about 3 hours waiting on him to finish. But don't feel the call to stay when you get ready to leave tonight. We appreciate having you here, sir. Thank you. With that then, let's move to the minutes of our last meeting, which was held July the 13th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion that we receive those minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Aaronwood,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council departmental reports are contained in your packet. You have those with you this evening. The administrator and/or department head will be glad to give you additional information as needed. Ms. Howell joins us for our financial report this evening. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am presenting the general fund operational results as of June 30th, 2021. As you know, June is the final month in the fiscal year, so we still have some auditing entries, accruals, receivables that will be going back and entering and posting in June for the fiscal year. And then the final results will be presented to you with the CAFR. So for July, the revenue was $4.7 million. For June, sorry, For June, $4.7 million, and we have a year-to-date total of $34,828,000. The operational expenditures for June were $3.6 million and a fund balance usage of $390,000. The year-to-date total expenditures is $30,546,000. If you look at the dashboards where we compare benchmarks to actual, you see that we have an overall positive variance of $4,282,000. And then the cash balance in the general fund is $18,473,822. That's it for the general fund. If there's anything I can answer.
Thank you. Questions?
The hospitality fund, how is it tracking versus budget?
It's very good. As actually the hospitality line item, we're actually 31% over.
How much?
31%. We collected $2,671,000 in hospitality taxes, and we only budgeted a little over $2 million because we were very conservative because we weren't sure how the pandemic was going to affect us. So,
I know it's in the report, but
sure.
2020, what the budget for going up to July or June 2020 Do you know what we had budgeted for revenue there?
For prior year,
Yeah, because I know we were very conservative in all
yes,
of our.
yes, sir. No, I don't have that with me. I don't have that with me. I apologize. I can go look it up.
Just shoot me an email.
I'll be happy to.
Others? Comments? Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate the update.
Thank you.
This evening, we welcome a petitioner. A petitioner is someone who wants to address city council and makes arrangements to do that by speaking with the city clerk. And Mr. James Plemons has petitioned to speak to council tonight in regards to the City of Greer Wrecker Ordinance. Mr. Plemons, the dais is yours, sir. When you get there, if you will give us your name and address just as a matter of record, it would, oh, you got some stuff for, all righty. It would help us have a record.
Good evening. Thank y'all for allowing me to come speak tonight. Once again, my name is James Plemons. I'm the owner of JLP Automotive, which is a business here in Greer. It is a towing and automotive repair shop. I am on your rotation list and came tonight to try to speak with you about some problems I see or we need to things that may need to be looked at. For those of you who don't know, I walk with a limp because I have one leg. I'm handicapped due to getting hit on 29 while I was working for Greer. Greer had called me out to assist on a tow. A drunk driver hit me. I lost my leg back in 2010. I've been in business now for several years. If I could bring, I gave everybody a handout of what things I'm wanting to try to talk about tonight. Because at this given time, I believe we have gotten out of the realm of being fair and equal. With that being said, I can show you what I'm talking about. Each of you have a copy that's highlighted. And we'll just try to run through that very quickly so I don't take up too much time. First off, as you can see on page 1, shall be unlawful for owner or agency of record service or towing service to respond to any accident without being called. I'm going to paraphrase. Y'all can read the full thing. Without being called by proper authority. The way I read that means if the police department does not call you, or the owner of the vehicle does not call you, you should not respond to any scene. Secondly, if we'll move on down to section D, the record service shall maintain a safe storage area inside the city limits. The safe storage area may be locked building or fenced in area where the vehicle is stored and shall not be, and property shall be not be accessible to the public. There is 4 rotation spots being held currently, maybe 5, of people that do not have a spot in the city limits. Those names would be D&D Towing, Motorsports Towing, Greer Towing, Collision Center of Greer Towing, and Thompson's. All 5 of them do not qualify to be on your list because they're not in the city limits. Or another reason going down the list. Moving down to H, the record rotation list shall be administered fairly in a manner designed to ensure that all record services on the list have equal opportunity to towing business. When we allow people not to follow the ordinance that y'all have set place, then we are allowing it to be compromised and not be fair. Moving to page 2. Down to subsection P. Each record service on the rotation list shall ensure that all records providing service shall display the record service name, address, telephone number for identifying purposes. These same names that I just named, with the exception of Thompson's, there is not a truck that exists that has that on there, any of them names. So when you look at that deeper, the next substation that I did not highlight, when you start talking about insurance on your truck, if you do not own a truck that has that listing on there, then how can you have insurance? And how can you have business license when you don't even have a business, when it's just a made-up name? Moving right along. The city limits, if you want to, Motorsports Towing, Greer Towing, and Greer and Collision Center of Greer is all being hauled to the same location, which is 13817 East Wade Hampton Boulevard. That business that is at that location is named Scott's Body Shop, which he's not even on the rotation list. But yet he's running 3 companies with his Scott's Body Shop truck that is listed, and that address is not in the city limits. So he's running 3 companies with a truck that's not even valid to be on your list, outside of the city limits, but yet it's happening. Moving right along. Eligibility for the requested towing. Any firm having a business operation any firm having its business operation and storage facility within the city limits shall be eligible for the rotation list, provided such a record service has valid license to do so within the business. Placement of its name on the list, provided it meets all the requirements. As far as the list being run correctly at the dispatching area, I have no quarrels with the way the list is being run with what they're given to run it with. They're given a thing, you got to run it the way you're given. So they are doing their correct diligence. It's just the integrity of the list that they're being given is where the problem is. If we'll move to page 5 at the bottom, section 94-154. It states, if more than one record business is at one location owned by the same person, they shall be considered as one business for the purpose of the rotation. This subsequently shall not apply to any business on the rotation list prior to March the 1st, 1999. This is an example of Mr. Barnes, the council member. He had 2 spots on the rotation list before that was amended and was grandfathered in. I have no quarrels with him being on the list twice because he was grandfathered in and everything was within the law. Should a business, after that, the way the ordinance is written, it says y'all can read, I'm sorry. The penalties is the next section that I'd like to talk a little bit on. If you are not enforcing the ordinance that is here, then this last section is kind of null and void. Why do you have a penalties if you're not going to enforce what is on the ordinance? With speaking with the police chief, I have been told that there's going to be an amendment to the ordinance that they're trying to work on right now with the city lawyers and stuff, but it hasn't been done as of yet because we're waiting on the lawyers is what I was told. But at the very end of that, it doesn't matter what you put down in writing if you're not going to enforce it. it's still going to, it doesn't matter as long as the enforcement. So if we can enforce this until our next one gets here, that's great. I would like for that because being a handicapped business owner is hard enough as it is. Not only the fact that I'm having to compete against a company that's paying the insurance on one truck and running 3 companies worth of calls. I did a Freedom of Information Act. He did 30 calls in 1 month. Mike did 8. I did 6. He did 30 calls. Where is that even remotely close to being fair? Like I said, I don't care how many's on the list. They can be 40 names on the list, as long as everybody's compliant and everybody's doing what the ordinance says. I would like to get a response back. I would like to know who should give me the response back and when, if y'all don't mind answering that today, because other responses I know you have to look into. I think that's all I have, but if not, I'm sure next month I can come back. And I appreciate your time.
Mr. Flemings, let me give you a little bit of oversight in terms of that process. I think it's a valid question. In a situation like this, when we have a petitioner, we take that petition seriously, and council takes it under advisement. We typically wouldn't have a specific answer for you this evening, simply because these things are generally addressed by staff at some point in time, and so we really don't have a time frame for how quickly somebody will be getting back with you. I do know that the chief was absolutely correct. They are working on some amendments and updates to the ordinance, and I think some of the points that you have raised are valid enough that they'll obviously get passed along to the chief for him to take a look at as well too. This is one of those situations where, just quite honestly, the record ordinance is not something we spend a whole lot of time on, and unless there's a squeaky wheel that needs some grease, we just don't get around to it sometimes.
Does a knee work? A squeaky knee? Does that work?
I believe a squeaky knee works tonight. So what I will do is, Mr. Merriman, I believe you have had some conversations with the chief and are working on him and the attorney with the updates, and I think we can promise Mr. Flemings and others that as soon as we've got something hammered out, that we will let them know. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
If I could ask, excuse me, if I could, I would like for the current ordinance to go ahead and be enforced. If we can try to push it, because like I said, if we can't enforce the law that's already in place, are we really going to be able to enforce the next one?
I think that message will get passed along to the chief. A show of hand, how many record owners do we have with us this evening? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, good showing. All right. We appreciate you bringing
Thank
this
you very much.
to our attention, sir. Thank you.
Who would be my contact?
Mr. Merriman, and you can reach him through Elizabeth Adams here at the city.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you. Have a great night.
Uh-huh. Let's move to a presentation. We have a presentation this evening regarding Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Dominique Dawkins with Community Specialist and Chanel Richardson, Community Development Department at Spartanburg County, have joined us this evening to give us an oversight and a view into the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So ladies, thank you for joining us this evening, and the floor is yours.
Good evening. Again, my name is Dominique Dawkins. I'm here with my colleague, Chanel Richardson, with Spartanburg County's Community Development Department. Thank you for having us today. I just wanted to briefly just discuss with you all in the audience the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP for short. The ERAP program is a U.S. Treasury-funded initiative funding, providing financial assistance for Spartanburg County residents, renters who are unable to pay rent or utilities due to the COVID pandemic. Assistance includes eligible late payments for rent or utilities accrued after March 13th of 2020. The total amount of financial assistance a household can receive under the ERAP program cannot exceed 15 months. Direct assistance is also offered to renters when landlords do not want to participate in the program. Where to apply? Residents can apply for assistance at Spartanburg Housing in Spartanburg, the Middle Tiger Community Center in Duncan, or the Upstate Family Resource Center in Boiling Springs. And we've provided some additional flyers for the front of the building if anyone is interested. Who is eligible? Again, renters, renter household with one or more persons who qualified for unemployment benefits, experienced a reduction in income, or experienced other financial hardships because of the COVID pandemic. A household that is at risk of homelessness or housing instability. It includes persons that are staying in a hotel or being at risk of eviction. Or a household's combined gross income can be no more than 80% of the area's median income. And that includes, the household cannot be more than 80% of the county's AMI. As of July 23rd, we've assisted about $54,000 in rental assistance to folks who live in the city of Greer, and over $1 million for residents, renters who are in the unincorporated areas of the county. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer any. And again, we have additional flyers. I can send that PDF as well for your website.
Sounds great. Council, questions or comments of this information?
How long will this program be available?
Currently, the program is up until the first round ends at the end of the year of 2021, and then we're actually going into a second round of funding, which will end around 2023.
What is Spartanburg County's AMI?
Our current AMI for a family of one is 38,000 for a family of one. So if you had a family of four, for example, their income could be no more than $54,000. So if they made up to $54,000, they would be eligible to apply.
What about the other counties? I know you mentioned Spartanburg and Greenville. What about the other counties around, like Cherokee and your guy?
As of right now, I'm sorry? NC State? SC State, sorry, SC State. We have information on some of our other communities. If you would like a copy of that, we push these monthly reports out to county council for every month, and administration, because they would like this information. So we have additional information if you'd like that.
Thank you. Those were the only two counties I had seen mentioned, so I wasn't sure if the others had their own setup.
Oh, yes, so the entire state has each county has different, are part of the program. So Richland County is part of the program as well, Greenville, Cherokee, the entire upper state is involved in the program.
Thank you. Excellent information. If you will send any of these resources to Ms. Duncan, she will be glad to make sure those are on our bulletin boards as well as on our website as well too. We'll see that it gets to the right department for that, and any additional flyers that you may have, if you want to leave those tonight, that would be perfect. And we thank you for coming tonight and giving us this update.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, council, let's go ahead and move on to appointments of boards and commissions. We still have an opening in district. I've done it again. Let's back up then. Let's go back to the administrator's report. Mr. Merriman, your report.
Mr. Mayor, you've just earned yourself an extra 30 seconds of an administrator's report. You know how long-winded I get. Mayor, council, thank you so much. Just real briefly, for folks that are interested, and I think that's anybody that uses North Main Street in Arlington this weekend, we will be closing that intersection at 5 o'clock on Friday to do some work on that intersection, some paving work, et cetera. It should or could last all weekend. Hopefully it's done quicker than that, but there will be some traffic disruptions in and around that area through the weekend. The second thing is, as you know, and I think I mentioned in the last council meeting, the work we had been doing at Leesburg Peak that we were under consent order with DHEC is now complete. So if you are in the area and you want to see what all the hubbub was about, you can see it over there at Leesburg Peak. But that work is complete. And finally, the bridge repair on the Blackwell Road Bridge should be complete this week. It is delayed a little bit, and I think you may have recalled that right before the last council meeting, we had a tree fall and damage some guardrails, so that would be the last little bit. But that work should be complete this week. And unless you have anything for me, that does complete my report for this evening.
Thank you, sir. And I might mention that a majority of council had the opportunity recently to participate in the annual Municipal Association of South Carolina conference. That is an opportunity for us to participate in a number of different types of training activities and to hear national speakers. It is also a good opportunity for to us as council members to have some time with Mr. Merriman and talk about things that may be coming up. And so this is a welcome opportunity for us to participate in that, and it's certainly also as well an opportunity for us to gather with other council members and mayors and have an opportunity to see what's going on across the state. We are always grateful for the things that are going on here and are much sought out in many cases by other cities to get a better understanding of what we have been able to do. And so it's a good trip for us, and one that we appreciate the city supporting us in. Now we will move to appointments of boards and commissions. In District 2, we have an opening on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I'll have that next meeting.
Thank you, sir. And in the Election Commission, Paul Lamb, who has moved to our Planning and Zoning Commission, has resigned his position. I have extended an offer to a lady, and I do not have an answer yet, so hopefully I will have that soon as well, too. If you have any recommendations in regards to the Election Commission, please forward those to me or just see me at any time about that. Council, we'll move to items of old business first this evening, the first of which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 29-2021. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Greer land development regulations by repealing and replacing in its entirety Article 8, Road Classifications and Design Standards. Action is required in this regard. Ms. Cotty, are you bringing us information in that regard? Or any new or additional information?
No, I believe City Engineer Steve Grant presented the first case, and Planning and Zoning does not have any updates, but
Okay.
I can try and answer questions if you have any.
Mr. Mayor, there is no new information.
Thank you. With that, then, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Well, Ms. Cotty joins us for the second and final reading of ordinance number 30-2021. Thank you. An ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by William Freeman located on Old Jones Road by 100% petition and to establish vacation of DRD for said property. Ms. Gotti, any new or additional information in regards to the second and final reading of ordinance number 30-2021?
I believe they just needed to add the statement of intent as an exhibit to the ordinance. So that is just as amended, and that's all that I have.
By show of hand, is the owner or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Doesn't appear to be. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the third item. It's the second and final reading of ordinance number 31-2020. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classifications of property owned by UPI Investments located at 0 Gary Armstrong Road from C2 commercial to C3. Any new or additional information in regards to ordinance number 31-2021?
No, sir.
With that, then, we will entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second. By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Any new or additional information on your behalf? Thank you, sir. Motion and second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Let's move to new items of business this evening, the first of which is the first reading of ordinance number 32-2021. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Greer zoning code of ordinances by adding to Article 4 definitions and Article 5 zoning district regulations to incorporate indoor amusement entertainment services within the City of Greer. Ms. Gotti, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So this is a request for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. The first thing that it would do would be to add a definition for indoor amusement and entertainment facilities. Again, it's pretty simple: establishments providing indoor amusement and entertainment services for a fee or admission charge, and then it has a number of uses that it might include, such as bowling alleys, arcades, roller skating, ice skating, archery, or the indoor axe throwing that you might see in other jurisdictions. So first of all, it establishes a definition, and then it designates which districts that it would be allowed by right. And staff is proposing that in C1, which is our downtown district, and then C3, which is our highway commercial, and then S1 services district as well. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second. Floor is open for discussion.
So it's already allowed in C2 now?
No. So we actually kind of see C2 as more of a neighborhood commercial, the types of places that C2 is allowed in the zoning, in our zoning map. Staff does not feel that these uses would necessarily be appropriate. So we are limiting that to downtown or highway commercial, which are typically located along major corridors like Wade Hampton. So something like a bowling alley, we would see more on Wade Hampton Boulevard, or like a more of a boutique, smaller type use in downtown.
But it is currently in C2. That's what the ordinance says. That's what you're trying to get.
Well, no, so there are some uses that are allowed. And so when we've had inquiries in the last kind of several months, it's made it really difficult to figure out kind of which uses are allowed where. So we wanted to make sure it was more clearly defined. So there are some uses that we've been able to allow, like escape rooms or like on a smaller scale. But one of the main reasons, one is to make it just more streamlined and easier for staff to answer questions. But just with the revitalization of downtown, we've had, with the hotel coming and the food hall, and there's been a lot of renewed interest, especially in these types of activities. And we've had a tenant inquire about potential expansion downtown as well. So that's what kind of precipitated this text change.
So currently.
Currently, this use is not
No, no, no,
included.
My question is currently, what zonings are these businesses operating in now, or are there any?
I mean, there are some that are in other districts that have just been grandfathered in over the years. And again, we've just kind of made interpretations on whether or not they'd be allowed based on other similar uses. So I believe there are some that are in kind of our C3 district right now. And C1, I know we did have an accessory kind of gun range that was part of a retail operation, and arcades and other locations.
And they'll be grandfathered in even
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned escape rooms. Now, so that would not be included in this, because it would be allowed in C2, right?
I think we have, again, it would be kind of up to staff interpretation. I believe there are some other uses in C2, like theater and other things that we would consider it allowed. But I think it could also fall under this as well. And with the UDO, I will say we are going to streamline uses way more than they are right now. But right now we are kind of stuck with really exhaustive lists in each of the districts.
Well, okay, so if we've got another entertainment escape room, what would your recommendation be is how to zone it?
I think moving forward, we would consider it in this, not in C2. We would consider it more of an indoor amusement type use. We have not had anything to kind of compare it to in the past.
But now it's operating in a OD?
I'd have to check into that. Do you have a specific one in mind?
It's on Memorial Drive Extension. It used to be doctor's offices, and now I'm assuming it's still OD.
I'll have to check into that one and see what it's zoned. Again, it would be,
Yeah, I know.
it would be grandfathered in if it was C2.
Well, I mean, it's brand new. I mean, it just literally opened, but because that type of entertainment's so popular, I think staff probably should figure out where it belongs.
So I don't want to belabor the point, Ms. Gotti, but I guess just to make sure I'm clear, for example, the Spinning Jenny, which is obviously right downtown, where would that be appropriate for another use? I mean,
I believe it's a bar, let's see, for C1.
well, I guess my question is, could other, and we say dance halls or ballrooms, be located in the downtown area then? Is that correct under this
Under
rewrite?
this ordinance.
Under this ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So there wouldn't be a variance for, say, an ice skating rink that wanted to be right on the other side of the railroad tracks then, would there? I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out is we are going to allow these types of indoor uses then in the greater downtown area that's appropriate?
Yes, so that specific example, they are currently zoned S1, but their desire for expansion is one of the factors that was brought into this. They are going to be going to Planning Commission to request C1 zoning so they can expand their facility. And so, yes, I would say that kind of area that generally does still have C1 zoning on the other side of the railroad tracks, we do see that as still appropriate. It's still part of the Greer station kind of area.
Well, why would you, if it's already S1, why do they need to change it to C1?
They have issues meeting setbacks. So that's kind of a separate issue than this text change. But again, it's just one of the many calls that we've gotten about certain uses downtown over the last several months.
So the setbacks are different for S1?
And C1, yes, sir.
does C1, because that particular building abuts residential property, and so is that required to have buffing?
Buffering.
Yes, buffering. Sorry.
Currently in S1 zoning, yes, it would. C1,
Okay.
I would have to check. I'm not
Well,
not
because, I mean, I understand C1 is really zero lot line.
Yes, sir.
I don't, if I was the owner of the building, I wouldn't give up S1 zoning.
Yeah. So this board will see that request most likely in September. So we can certainly have those discussions with that request.
So are you gonna be deciding, these issues on a case-by-case basis, or as it comes?
I'm sorry, could you clarify? So,
I mean, like, when somebody comes to you and they say that they wanna do a dance hall, they wanna do one or.
oh, so if it were, if they're in zoning district C1, C3, or S1, they would be allowed by right with this ordinance. So if you'd like to see changes or potentially it allowed in C2 with special exception, those are certainly things we could explore if that's the will of council. But again, we are proposing it to be allowed by right in those districts.
This comes as first reading, council, and so we certainly will have time to maybe probe on this a little bit more. We have a motion and a second at this point. Other questions or comments?
By changing this, is it opening it up to be a little bit more lenient on what type of businesses you run, or is it kind of restricting some of the entertainment that you might be having?
I think it broadens the definition, might be the best word.
Yes, I mean, it's hard to answer that without a specific use in mind. But this would allow it to be by right. They could just apply for a certificate of occupancy, and as long as they are in those 3 zoning districts, and they meet setbacks and parking and everything else that they would have to meet, staff would approve that. So, it's just allowing some more uses that may not be allowed right now in S1, like a bowling alley or a roller skating rink. I'm not sure if there are uses in there that we would currently interpret. Again, the uses are very out of date and very exhaustive, but staff has had to make it open to a lot of interpretation in the past. So this is just kind of a clearer way to make sure we understand where they're allowed and not allowed. But again, if you guys have some consensus and you would want kind of a special exception, I know you mentioned some uses for C2. That's certainly something staff could bring back if you're interested.
Since this is going to open some of these businesses up to other areas, what are the considerations for instance, like, I don't know if dance halls or bowling alleys, or trying to see something, or shooting ranges, a lot of those can bring noise potentially with them. I mean, where do we fall out on noise ordinances and restrictions and requirements and things like that if they transition those businesses?
So right now the noise ordinance is just citywide. It's not per specific zoning district. So I don't think it would have any impact on this. They would certainly per use have to, meet certain setbacks and be further away from different districts and have screening if they're next to residential or a non-commercial use. But that's about it right now. So if that's
Except
something.
for C1. Right.
Except for C1, that's correct.
I think that's the only challenge I can see is that, some of these types of businesses could be disruptive in some of these areas that, in the past, they haven't been allowed. And so, I'm not sure if there's any type of standard we could set or something that we should maybe be considering, when opening certain types of businesses up to a broader audience that could be more noisy and it could definitely disrupt.
I think that, I mean, just from a staff's perspective, I think that would be more likely in C1. Our C3 and S1 zoning districts already have a lot of allowed uses that have much higher intensity, higher noise, hours of service. So we don't view it that different than some things that are already allowed. So C1 would be kind of an exception. However, bars and restaurants are allowed downtown too. So, I mean, we're certainly willing to incorporate any kind of considerations that you'd like us to do in the ordinance.
Now, what was the thought process of taking C2 out of the mix?
Again, we just view C2 as more of a neighborhood commercial type zoning district, and the areas of town that have C2 zoning, we just didn't feel that this type of use may be the most appropriate in those locations. We thought it was more appropriate along kind of in our core downtown activity area and then along those corridors. That C3 is our commercial, highway commercial. So they're the more kind of intense commercial corridors. But that's why, again, if you guys are interested in having this in C2, maybe a special exception and having a couple of kind of caveats on what you'd feel comfortable with or have that go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, that's certainly something we could add.
I just kind of thinking like what Jay's thinking, if it's in C1 and 3, I would think that it would be appropriate for 2 as well. Just,
I mean, C1 is just, you know, it's our core downtown, so it's our most active, and then those corridors are as well. So we do have quite a bit of C2 that border neighborhoods and are just in areas that we wouldn't feel as comfortable. But again,
But
if that's something you guys would like to see, we can certainly add that.
But in C2, you do require screening, and that's a big thing. In C1, I mean, so C1, let's assume that
We do, although
this
it's
property
weak.
that's going before the, I guess, the planning commission or they could take the building down so they can get more space and move it right to the edge of the property line, correct? By the way, C1.
Yeah, there's 0 lot line setbacks in C1. Again, C1 zoning is only allowed in our core downtown, so.
Well, but C1, but what you're doing is you're moving that C1 footprint, and I understand that, but it abuts residential as well. So,
Yeah, I would just encourage you all to look at C1 as a whole and not consider specific properties. We can certainly have that conversation when that property comes for rezoning, whether or not you feel like that's an appropriate zone, but just looking at the current C1 footprint.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
yes.
Mr. Bettis, Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 33-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Alida Garcia located at 150 Delgrave Street from RM1 to R5 for said property. Ms. Cotty?
Sure. Again, this is a rezoning request. This is for one parcel. This is an aerial view of the property. This is the current zoning map. The pink that you see is C3 highway commercial. The red is C2 commercial, and then that kind of lighter tan color is RM1, which is what the parcel currently is. The future land use map, they're currently located in suburban commercial corridor. And then here is the street view of the property. And so they are, I'm going to go back just a little so you can see Delagrave. Okay, So they are requesting to go from RM1 to R5, which is a 5,000 square foot minimum lot. And their intent is to subdivide the lot into two smaller lots that front Delagrave Road. And I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion. And a second. A show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? No one indicated so. Floor is open for discussion or questions.
Now, when they do, how many houses are they wanting to put on?
They are requesting their intent that they have told us is to subdivide and create two lots that front Delagrave.
For two houses?
Yes, sir.
What does RM1 allow?
RM1, the minimum lot size for a single family home is 9,000 square feet.
And it would be changing how many, what R5 is how many square feet?
R5 is a minimum of 5,000 square feet lots.
In multifamily, I mean, they could do a duplex there,
Yes, sir.
but they're just,
I don't believe they have enough room for a triplex or a quadplex, but they do have enough room for a duplex.
but their intent is just to have two separate units.
Single family, yes. I mean, again, they actually couldn't. If they did R5, they could only have single family. So that is the intent that they have told us. And Planning Commission did hold a public hearing earlier this month, and they did recommend approval.
Comments? Questions? Further discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 35-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by True North Properties LLC and Cube Property Solutions LLC located at 101 Elmer Street from RM1 to R5. Ms. Cotty?
Sure, this is a rezoning request, similar to the last request, another RM1 that's wanting to go to R5 patio home, which is a minimum of 5,000 square foot lots. This is located very close to the last rezoning that you saw at the intersection of Elmer and Kemper Lane. This is an aerial view of the site. This is the zoning map. Again, that tan color is RM1 and red is C2. This also is located in suburban commercial in our future land use. This is a current street view of the site, and then the survey on the next slide, I think, will explain it in more detail. So currently the parcel, the survey as shown is showing 3 parcels. Currently it is 1. There are currently 2 existing single-family homes that are on this side of the lot that you can see in these 2 pictures. So they are requesting this zoning to be able to create lots to make those conforming, because right now they are considered legal non-conforming. And then that 3rd parcel that is left over is a little over 8,000 square feet, and they would want to put a new single-family detached home on that lot. So again, it is 3 lots, and it would be for 2 existing single-family homes that are currently on the ground, and then 1 new lot and new home.
You said the future land use is what now?
So it is listed as suburban commercial. These properties are located very close to the Walmart Supercenter. And so they are
located right in the middle of the neighborhood too.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
I'm really close to.
So it's a big swath, and we may need to consider updating the land use map to be traditional neighborhood. If you see that kind of peachish color that borders the orangish peachish, that is traditional neighborhood. So I think that's probably the more appropriate category for this, but it does happen to fall. It's kind of right on that border. Yes, so staff would see it as more appropriate as traditional neighborhood. But again, even suburban commercial does include some single-family homes. But kind of smaller lots, higher density, close to these centers is what we consider appropriate.
For the purpose of further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Floor is open. By show of hands, is the owner of the property with us this evening, or a representative of the owner of the property? Anything y'all would like to add to this conversation at this point? Okay, thank you. All right. Floor is open for discussion.
And so the plan is to build, single-family homes?
Yes, so R5 would only allow for single-family detached. So that would be what they would be allowed to build on that third lot.
And the access is coming off Kemper Lane.
Yes, for the newly created lot. I believe one of the access points for the existing house is Kemper, and then that one up at the top is from Elmer. And again, those are two existing homes.
So now, is this the property too that abuts up to the funeral home?
Let me look.
And if there is there any, screening that required?
So screening would not be required for residential. We only require screening when it's commercial that comes in and abuts residential. So just rezoning wouldn't trigger that. The residential wouldn't be required to provide screening. So if they don't have screening currently, it would be considered grandfathered in. They could certainly put up their own fence or landscaping, of course, but they would not be required to with our current ordinance. And Planning Commission, again, held a public hearing earlier this month, and they did recommend approval for this case as well.
What is that OHP line that goes through the back of that property?
I believe it's overhead power.
I mean, so there's a power line that's running through there right now?
Do you guys?
No, it's just a light post. We actually had a meeting with Kevin from CPW, and we requested for that to be shifted on the back of the property. They're working on it.
And how far is that? Is that 5 foot right there? Is that how far the properties or the proposed house is set off of the property line?
The proposed house would have to be a minimum of 5.
But I believe we have about 12 feet on each side for the new proposed home. On each side, and the back is close to 32 feet, give or take. We do have to have 30 foot in the front of the driveway, that's why you see L1 and L2. We thought about moving that property line closer to the existing home, but we're only doing the 30 foot to allow that house to have more yard space.
Others?
So you're gonna have two driveways from each home's gonna have its own driveway?
Correct. Yeah. As of now, there's one shared driveway for both homes.
Yeah.
So it says asphalt right there, it's kind of a shared driveway.
And there's only one tax map number on those two homes. The intent will be to assign each home with its own address and a tax map number, and then have another one for the proposed home in the back.
Yeah, it is. Actually, this is better than what is on now.
Others? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you. Council, let's move to, what do we have to, item 4, first reading of ordinance number 36-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Kishna and Pramoda Valabahini located at 101 Austin Street from RM to R2. Ms. Cotty.
Sure, this is another rezoning request for one parcel. They're requesting to go from RM1 residential multifamily to RM2 residential multifamily, which allows slightly smaller lots for the uses that are allowed in residential multifamily. They have let us know their intention is to do a quadplex. So this is the aerial view of the site. You can see kind of to the north are the Greer Housing Authority apartments, and then to the south there are kind of existing single-family homes, as well as to the east. This is the current zoning map. Most of the area is RM1. There is a piece that is C2 across the street. And then the future land use map does call for this area to be traditional neighborhood, which calls for higher density, smaller lots, different housing types. This is a current street view of the site. And then that is all the information. Oh, sorry. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing earlier this month, and they did recommend approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Be ashamed to get rid of all that kudzu.
Yeah, it is a lot.
My first thing is say thank you.
Yeah, it is a tough site to develop. We drove out there, and I was.
What is it? But
it's got
That place has been vacant for.
quite a bit of vegetation. So.
if you don't mind, let's entertain a motion to receive at this point.
Second.
Motion and second. Floor is open for discussion.
I'm glad to see that.
What is C2 across the street? What is that?
I'm not sure. I think it's. I think it's a not either vacant or a single family home that is just.
Because that's on Austin Street where this is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm,
That
Austin.
forest used to be a.
Yeah, I believe it's vacant. It
Yeah,
didn't
it's
look
vacant,
like there
yeah.
was anything when we drove out there to look at the site, so. There are a lot of kind of existing legal nonconformities out in this area.
Show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Anything you would like to add to the conversation? Okay, thank you. Discussion. Further questions, comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Banner.
Yes. Thank you. Last item before us this evening in our regular session is the first reading of ordinance number 37-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of a portion of property owned by SRMC Ventures LLC located on South Highway 14 from C2 to DRD. Ms. Cotty?
Sure. We'll start with an aerial view of the site. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. This is kind of the pad-ready site with the old credit union at the corner of Westmoreland Road and Highway 14. Directly to the south is the Wattawash car wash, and of course the hospital across the road. So they are requesting to rezone a portion of the site. The highlighted portion of the property that is on the right side of Highway 14 is not part of the project. But they are requesting to rezone to DRD to do research and development and a variety of commercial and retail. So this is an aerial view of the site. The current zoning map, again, it is C2. Across the road is both C3 and OD office district. And then the future land use map calls for mixed employment. This is a current street view of the site. Again, that old bank that was being used as a COVID testing site for a while, and then the rest that is kind of pad ready. It has the existing roads already in it. And then this is the conceptual site plan. They are asking for up to, I believe, 125,000 square feet of research and development flex space, which would be 2 buildings along the rear of the property, and then a mix of commercial, restaurant, retail along Highway 14 up to 100,000 square feet, again, of kind of mixed commercial. They are completing a traffic impact analysis, and they are proposing kind of heavy landscaping high-end commercial finishes that are included in the statement of intent. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing earlier this month and recommended approval, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive 37-2021.
Second.
Motion is second. Floor is open for discussion. By show of hands, the owner of the property represented the owner of the property with us this evening. All right, thank you. We may call on you later, but for the time, the floor is open.
The only thing that concerns me is there's existing driveways that empty out on Old Highway 14, which is just a 2-lane road that really couldn't handle any major increase in traffic load. I don't know if in their statement of intent, if they plan on using that main entrance only.
Let me check. I don't believe they address it specifically in the statement of intent. We can certainly ask the applicant, or if that's something you'd like to include in the statement of intent, we can look at that as well. But do you want to?
Does it go all the way back to the right, down to, I thought it did end it to the left. Sir, you want to give us any explanation on Old Highway 14 there?
Absolutely. I'm Jeff Reed with ELS, and our intent is to use the existing roads for access to this property, which we think we have every reason to believe that the traffic study that's being required will support the use of those existing driveway cuts that were permitted by SCDOT.
And they're looking at both Highway 14 and Old Highway 14 in the traffic study?
That I would have to confirm. Whatever we've been told by planning that we have to address in the traffic study.
They should be including all ingress and egress points. And I will mention that with the LDR amendment that was adopted earlier tonight, any road frontages that are not up to current standards will have to be improved. So the frontage of Old Highway 14, if the width or pavement depth is not up to standards, that would be part of this project to make those improvements. We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. We're not in civil review, but again, they are completing a traffic study that will address that potentially.
Is the request for rezoning just because this just doesn't fit nicely under the umbrella of C2?
I believe some of the uses that they're interested in, specifically the research and development, are not currently allowed in C2, and the kind of mix of uses.
Okay, I see what you're saying. The C2 just encumbers the whole piece of property and this just allows them to better break it up.
Yes, sir. The research and development flex space would not currently be allowed in C2. But again, with the DRD, where they've located it and what they've kind of defined it as and the square footages, staff does feel it's appropriate in this location.
I like DRD, but educate me as to why that wouldn't be C3.
I don't believe research and development, I don't believe the flex space was allowed in C3. So.
What would that typically be allowed in?
I1 or S1, and then the retail and some of the mix of uses would not be allowed then there, so.
How does this is an existing development that's being redeveloped. Here again, another education. Sorry. Sidewalks. Are they required at any point on the exterior on something like this, on redevelopment?
They should be if they're not already. Let me check the statement of intent and see. I am not sure if they're out there or not. We will certainly look into that before second reading.
Highway 14.
Okay.
That's built up real high, it drops off.
Exterior sidewalks are usually something we include. So yes, we can certainly take that back to the applicant.
I'm not saying that that's what I want because there's no connectivity, but just an educational point for me.
Others? Further discussion, questions? First reading comes with approval from the Planning Commission. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, thank you, Ms. Gotti. Concludes our regular session this evening. We do have one matter to discuss in executive session. I'll entertain a motion that we receive that matter.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss an economic development matter pertaining to Project Osprey as allowed by state statute, section 30-470A5.
Comes as a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we will stay in chambers while the room is cleared, so. Council, in executive session, we've considered one economic development matter, taking no action in that regard. Do I hear a motion to come out of executive session?
So motion.
And a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we stand adjourned.